Okay, everyone, we are live now, so we are going to start this town hall meeting. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us at the Staten Island School Safety Town Hall meeting. My name is Mona Davids. I am a member of the NYC School Safety Coalition. I'm joined this evening by my co-host, Jimmy Desdorado. And as well, we will have our guests, our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start first with a quick 1-minute introduction of our panelists. We have Congresswoman Malliotakis, who's going to be joining us shortly, as well as Assemblymember Mike Riley. So we'll start the introductions with my co-host, Jimmy Desdorado, and then we will continue. Jimmy?
Hi, thank you, Mona, for putting this together. It's a pleasure to co-host this with you. I want to thank all our elected officials and Chief Obie for coming to this event. My name is Jimmy Desdorado. I'm a PTA president of IS 72 and a co-president, PTA president at PS 60. I'm also on the CEC District 31 as an IEP representative. I'm here speaking in my own capacity, not a part of any PTA or any council. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a parent, a concerned parent. It's important to me, to get this going, and so this school safety is. I also am a former school safety agent. I worked 4 years as a school safety agent, moved on to the MTA, where I work now. But I have a passion for school safety, and I'd love to get involved in being a parent advocate for our parents. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And we're going to start with the introductions with our panel, and we will begin first with Deputy Chief Obey.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I thank you so much for having me on tonight. I have a list of the questions here, so we'll get to them as they come along, but I'm just glad to be a part of this panel. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Assemblymember Mike Cusick.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for having this. This is what we need, interaction as we keep our children safe in our schools. It's good to be part of this panel with folks in education such as yourself, my colleagues in government, and the deputy chief. And I look forward to the discussions and to listening to folks as we move forward. Again, our ultimate purpose is to keep our children safe in our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assemblyman Cusick. I see that we are also joined by Assemblyman Mike Riley. If you could please take a moment to introduce yourself. Welcome, Mike.
I want to thank you for having me. I want to echo my colleague Mike Cusick's words that it's great to have this dialogue, and I thank the chief for joining us as well. And not only as an elected official, I'm a parent of public school, high school public school students, and I know how we all have concerns and questions, and I'm hoping that we'll have a good, robust conversation. And like Mike Cusick said, this is about the safety of our students and our staff members, and we all want to work together. So this is a good first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman Riley. And Councilman David Carr, welcome. If you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mona. I appreciate your having me here today, and you as well, Jimmy. I'm the council member for the Mid-Island, the 50th District. I took office about 2 weeks ago, a little early, taking over for Councilmember Steve Matteo, who's been representing the area for almost 8 years. This discussion is obviously coming at a crucial moment, and I just thought it was so important for me to be here. I was able to attend the forum held at Susan Wagner High School earlier this week, and we need to keep the dialogue going about how we can enhance public safety generally, but in particular in our public schools. And I look forward to getting into the discussion with all the panelists and also the folks who are joining with their questions and comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carr. And I see we are joined by Congresswoman Malliotakis. Thank you so very much for joining us. We see you are in transit. We're just doing introductions, quick introductions. So if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mona. And Mona, thank you for your leadership. I know that, in fighting these battles against City Hall sometimes, not only for public safety, but preserving our education system, you've really been at the forefront. So I want to thank you. I've read a lot about you in over the years. And so right now, obviously, we have grave concerns about public safety, what is happening in and around our schools. We are concerned about staffing shortages. We are concerned about school discipline, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to push for solutions from this new administration in particular. I think there's an opportunity for us to really change the direction of our schools for the better. My colleagues and I saw Mike Cusick on, and Mike Riley as well, we held a great conversation with the NYPD, with people from the DOE as well the other day. And I think it was the first step in the right direction to really make sure that we are doing good things for the parents, for the students, of course, first and foremost, and our educators as well. So I look forward to hearing the discussion, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of it.
Thank you, Congresswoman Malliotakis. So, I have to say, I'm so happy that we have our assembly members on this in this town hall on the Zoom, because, and I'm gonna jump right into it. And of course, Chief Obey, we have lots of questions and lots of concerns, and I see the questions coming in the Q&A and in the chat. But the bottom line is that we see a surge in violent incidents at our schools. We see an increase in the number of weapons confiscated in our schools. As you hear from the students themselves, they do not feel safe in school, and they do not feel safe commuting to school, outside of school, in their communities. And I want us to have an honest community conversation about what we're dealing with, both why we do have this school safety shortage, what we can do to increase the amounts of school safety agents, but also the other reasons of why students are fearful. And I know this is going to it may become touchy for some people, because there's a reason for why students feel unsafe in their communities and traveling to school, which has to very much, involve some of these criminal justice reforms that have had unintended consequences. But that being said, I really would like to begin with Chief Obey. And I know that Jimmy has questions for the chief, and I've submitted a number of questions for Chief Obey that parents have asked me, so that she is prepared to answer some of these questions. But I will start, and again, this town hall is not just about Wagner High School, it's about all Staten Island schools, elementary, middle, and high school. And it also, involves the rest of the city. But I want to start first with Wagner, because Wagner right now is front and center. And my question to Chief Obey to begin with is, the Wagner students have requested permanent scanning at their school. And these, this is directly from the students, and we've seen the news coverage. One student says they don't want to die. The other student says, they didn't come to school for a few days, and the walkout. So my question to Chief Obey is, how many schools on Staten Island do have permanent scanning? And will the School Safety Division, will the NYPD grant the request from these students for permanent scanning? That is my question. And then Jimmy will ask his question.
Okay, so thank you again for having me. As it pertains to the request for scanning, I haven't seen it. But the approach that we take in the NYPD is we cannot go into schools and set up scanning without collaborating very closely with the DOE. It's a community effort in that sense. So, we essentially have to sit down together, make that decision with the stakeholders, typically principals and staff in schools, the DOE, us, we get together and we decide on if the school is going to be scanning. We've had expanded scanning since November 1st. As you know, the mayor, wanted us to conduct more unannounced scanning, which is what Wagner has now and a lot of the other schools in Staten Island have. So we're typically in Wagner. I believe this week we're in Wagner all week, but then we'll move around as, situations arise citywide. So with expanded scanning started November 1st, you'll see that increase in weapons. I just always want to say that, that spike is there only because, I think in part, not only, but in part because we now conduct we hit about 30 sites per week. So with that, you're going to see some increase in weapons. Not to say that, Wagner is that one school, but citywide, we have to go to different locations wherever we see incidents arise. The one school in Staten Island where you have full-time scanning is South Richmond High School. I think that the rationale for all of us, and I'm not going to speak for the DOE, is to shift away from full-time scanning. I've been through plenty of these meetings. A lot of them stigmatize the local communities. I've heard that. Stigmatize the school itself. I've heard that. So I think there's a lot of thought that has to go into making Wagner a full-time school. If that is a desire of the school staff and the students, I'll meet with my DOE counterparts. We'll have a meeting with the school community to come to some consensus. But I think now in 2021, going into 2022, I think from what I see that there's a shift getting away from full-time scanning to unannounced scanning, where we go to that school once or twice a week, or the school staff can request for us to come and scan. Again, stigma, there's stigma attached to the schools, and believe it or not, there's a segment of that population, the student population, that will probably say they want scanning, but there's another segment that says, hey, you know what, we don't want scanning, we don't want this in our school. So there's a larger conversation to be had. I think that's the answer to that, but I haven't heard it. And, now that you're mentioning this, we'll certainly reach out. I'll reach out to my counterparts in the DOE, and we'll put our heads together and come up with scanning. With scanning comes a lot of resources. We have to certainly up the number of agents in the school. Wagner now has about 11 agents, on average, compared to, 10 to 11 agents per day. Very similar to the 2019 numbers also. So there's a lot of resources that goes into it. We have to have permanent equipment that's set into that school. We have to have permanent staff in addition to the 10 or 11 SSAs that we have in that school. So there's a conversation to be had with scanning. But what I certainly heard from, the elected officials and City Hall is the preference really is unannounced scanning rather than having a permanent scanning in schools. So I hope that answers your question. I don't know if that was helpful.
I have a follow-up question to what you just spoke about. The request for full-time scanning from the Wagner students, it's on television. When they were interviewed, this is what they said. But I want to come back to what you're saying, where you say there's a stigma to scanning. What we're finding is that children want to be safe, and parents want to know that their children are safe. When we go to City Hall, and you're saying, City Hall is moving away from it, but we have a new City Hall.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not just City Hall. What I see here as the commander is I see a shift in meetings, in language, in, just the tone as we move ahead with school safety. I think we're moving away from having full-time scanning in schools. When you look at the schools that have full-time scanning citywide, some of them have been full-time scanning schools since the 80s or the 90s. So I think that we all have to rethink school safety, as it pertains to scanning. I don't know that Wagner itself needs full-time scanning. We've never, I've been here since last year, been here a little over a year, and what I've seen is it's not a problematic school, so to speak, until we started to have a rash of incidents back to back, and of course, with expanded scanning, you're gonna see more weapons, so, I don't want to stigmatize the school, but all this to say that we have to have a very careful conversation about full-time scanning in any school citywide. I tell you, maybe that's a segment of the population, student population that wants it. But the fact of the matter is that, not all students, want scanning in that school. And we also have to hear from the staff. What is it that the principals are saying about wanting full-time scanning? So there's a larger conversation to be had, after this, where we all get our heads together and we say, listen, is this the type of school that's right for full-time scanning? I say no. My preference is unannounced scanning. We come to you once or twice, whatever the principal wants, we'll do. I work with the DOE very closely. We'll come to your school once or twice a week, that type of thing. But to put permanent equipment in there, I think that I see that shift away from full-time for, having permanent equipment in any school.
Okay, I just have one last question for you, Chief Obey, and then Jimmy will ask his question, because I don't know if, you can monitor the chat. Our panelists can monitor the chat as well as the Q&A, and the comments that are coming in from the audience, from parents here, they're disagreeing with you, Chief Obey, on the scanning. But I understand that every school has a monthly safety meeting, correct? Okay.
So that's really, I think the school staff typically will put that together. Now, instead of the full-time scanning, some schools have random scanning, which means that the equipment is there. The equipment is there, and then the school principal could decide at one point, on Tuesday, we'll have random scanning, but the equipment is in the school. I think that's preferable. But again, I think there's a conversation to be had, and I don't know that we could certainly do this here, but we could certainly look at random scanning. We have a number of sites citywide where we have random scanning, and the school principal, decides on certain days when they want to scan 2-3 times a week, that type of thing. But I think we should have a larger discussion about full-time scanning at Wagner.
Okay, but just coming back to the safety meetings, and if you look at the chat, we have parents here from Wagner and their children saying that they want the scanning, they don't feel safe. And you say that you want to listen to the students and the school community. So these safety meetings that you have, now that you're saying that you want to—
No, I don't have them. It's held in schools. I don't have any.
My question is there a parent representative and a student representative on the safety committee, so that, at schools throughout the city that, are part of these discussions? Because my concern is this, and this is what I have seen. I see what Eric Adams calls a numerical minority of people who are opposed, who feel that scanning makes them feel stigmatized or that they're in prison. But I know that I cannot go into 1PP without going through a scanner. Yeah. I cannot go to city.
Mona, I totally get your point. I tell you honestly.
I just want to make sure.
No, I totally understand. But remember that my perspective, no, I understand. My perspective is more diverse, which is I see things citywide. Without mentioning any schools, I've gone to schools where we've had scanning, and I have been told, we don't want scanning here. Exactly what you said, which is, I feel like I'm walking into, and we're speaking openly here, and I feel like I'm walking into some correctional facility. All I'm saying is, let's be cautious a little bit, and let's have a large conversation. Again, the NYPD I can't go into Wagner today and say, I cannot alone make that decision. So it is the NYPD, it is the DOE, it's the school staff. We'll do that. I will promise you that we'll do that. starting tomorrow, I'll reach out to my counterparts in the DOE. We'll certainly have that meeting. All I say is let's think about it. That's all, because I know what I see citywide, what I hear during different meetings. This meeting happens to be one of the many that I go to, but all I'm saying is let's just have a larger conversation, talk it out, and let's see what's best for Wagner. But it has to be with the DOE, NYPD, and the school staff. That's all I say.
So thank you, Chief Obey. So we'll continue with Jimmy's question, and then I'd like to hear from our elected officials as well, because they're on the ground and this is their community.
Thank you. Chief Obey, I totally respect, your rank and he coming here and answering questions. I just do want to have one little follow-up when it comes to the scanning. I think we're looking at it a different approach. I think instead of looking at it citywide, I think we need to look at it individual wise. So not necessarily, yes, there might be some schools in the Bronx or Brooklyn or other schools in the boroughs that might not want that. That's not what Staten Island wants. Staten Island for the majority of Staten Islanders, they want scanning in their schools. And so getting back to the point, so random scanning, in my view, doesn't work. So when you have an incident at a school, the next day, all these kids know the next day scanning is coming. So what happens is now we see lately that they have a lot of weapons the next day when the kids know that scanning is going to happen. So they're emboldened now. They know that there's no repercussion, and that goes into my other.
I understand the message. I think that I want everyone on this call to take away is the NYPD. I cannot go into a school to set up scanning, and I can't go into Wagner, tell Wagner, you're going to be a school, full-time scanning school. So we have to look at the rules, which is I have to meet with the DOE and with the school staff and collectively come to a decision about full-time scanning. That's all I'm saying. I'm just telling you what I've seen citywide. You're right. Staten Island may not be, someone just said it's different from what I've seen citywide. That might very well be true. All I say is a larger conversation I cannot speak to just NYPD going in and setting up scanning in any school, period. It has to be working with the DOE and also working with school staff. I think that comes across.
But you keep on saying school staff, and I get that and I understand that. But the parents and the students and the community must also be at the table. It's not just about
and that is fine. We could certainly do that. That's not an issue at all. But my point is that we do not have, the authority to just go into a school and set up scanning. That's my point. I have to work very closely with the DOE. In this one school, if we have the student reps, parent reps, that's not an issue at all. We'll sit together, come to some consensus and agree on what has to be done at the school.
So I'd like for our audience to hear from our elected officials, and you can see the comments in the chat and the Q&A. And if you are an audience member and you're watching and you're registered on Zoom and you would like to ask your question on camera, then please raise your hand and then we will allow you to ask your question on camera. But I really would like to hear from our elected officials.
If I can jump in, Mona, because I'm almost at my destination here, and I would like to comment on this issue because this is an incredibly important issue. And when I was running for mayor in 2017, I brought up this issue of surveys that were done in particular schools in which a majority of teachers said that they felt unsafe in the classroom, and that's something that should be a red flag for the administration. If teachers, if parents, if students are saying that they want to have metal detectors, then that is something that should be implemented, period. I mean, there are not enough school safety agents to be scanning randomly at all the schools. I think that right now, in particular, they're short staffed. We've seen retirements, we've seen the vaccine mandates affecting it. We've seen the number of people who the presence of school safety officers have been reduced. In fact, one of the articles had shown that there were supposed to be 14 safety officers at Wagner. There were only 7. So look, on average, we're being told it's about 25% reduction across the city of New York. That's significant. The other issue is guidance counselors, and I think we need to focus on that as well. That was something that came up during our meeting the other day. We need to have more guidance counselors for intervention. But I think there's nothing wrong, and this idea of a stigma, I think is just, it's just wrong. And I think that I'm hoping that the new administration will really reconsider this, because if you're hearing the demands from the community of that school, teachers included, then it should be something that is followed through. So that's my view. As I said, we're going to take some of those suggestions that we discussed at the meeting the other day and write a letter to the new chancellor, hoping that he's going to take these considerations seriously. I think with the new administration, that is a real opportunity. But the schools, the person you have on the panel here, the officer, she's absolutely right. It's not her decision. It's not even, her union's decision. It is, at the end of the day, the administration's decision, and that's who we need to push collectively to. So, that's my view. And I also want to bring up the other issues. School discipline. We got to get serious about school discipline. You can't have kids that are repeatedly doing things and disrupting the classroom and endangering others, and nothing happens. There needs to be consequences. Part of the reasons why children are doing this is because they think they can get away with it. Why? Because they are. They're not being suspended. They're not being reported. And quite frankly, they're seeing what's going on in our city, where crime has increased and people are doing bad things in society and they're not being punished. They're being released back into the street. So that's my view. You have my word. I'm going to continue to advocate for this. I look forward to working with my local partners and with advocates like you, Mona. But I appreciate you bringing us all together to really have this discussion to see. I think it's more about collectively finding ways to work together to push this. And we need to be vocal, and we need to be collective, and we need to be united in the front. So whatever the decisions are by your group tonight, what you think the suggestions need to be, follow up with my office. Lily is going to remain on the call. But whatever this collective group comes up with in terms of solutions, keep us posted, because we really need to be united in pushing for these things. As you know, we have to fight twice as hard to get half as much sometimes. But thank you, Mona, for having me, and I will defer to my other colleagues to be able to chime in on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in. This is a discussion that happened in the Congresswoman's office this week with the elected officials and law enforcement and the Department of Ed. And as the chief had said, this is not a decision made by NYPD. It's a collective decision. And as the Congresswoman said, it's an issue that will be addressed hopefully by the new administration. But this is something that, again, that's what this forum and the meetings that we've had collectively in the Congresswoman's office, and that we're continuing with all stakeholders. And Mona, you make a good point. That's why there should be, that's why this forum's important. The one at Susan Wagner was important. But there will certainly be, and we've been guaranteed by the new administration, that there will be voices heard from all stakeholders, including parents of students.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mona. I do see someone in here that's holding my feet to the fire by saying, yes, I will reach out. We'll certainly reach out to the DOE tomorrow, and we'll get that discussion going. And, I don't know about the holidays next week, but we certainly will reach out to the staff at Wagner, have a sit down. But the first step is meeting with the DOE, and I'll do that tomorrow, just so we can get the conversation going about having scanning in the school.
And I just want to add a piece of trivia that I learned today, just very briefly. At the press conference introducing our incoming police commissioner, Commissioner Sewell, one of the things that she said at the press conference was that she used to be a school resource officer. For our audience that are unaware, school resource officers are, they're almost the same as school safety agents, is that in New York City, we call them school safety agents because they are civil servants and they're unarmed. But in the rest of the state and in the rest of the country, they are called school resource officers, and they are police officers and they are armed. And our incoming police commissioner at one point was a school resource officer. So we are somewhat encouraged by that. But I'd like to really hear from, Councilman Carr and Assembly Member Mike Riley.
Sure, Mona. I'm very happy to get into this with everyone. I think firstly I want to talk about some of the things the Congresswoman referenced with respect to school safety agents and sort of the lack thereof that we've been seeing in our schools. Obviously, the pandemic and mandates have had their effect on the number of school safety agents in any one time at Susan Wagner and at other schools throughout Staten Island and the rest of the city. But I think it's also important to make a couple of points about them moving forward. I think there's been this discussion about whether SSA should remain under the jurisdiction of the NYPD or be transferred to the Department of Ed's jurisdiction. And my opinion, and I think the opinion of virtually every Staten Islander, is that they have to remain under the supervision of the NYPD. That's not a knock against DOE, but DOE is not home to the best public safety professionals in the world. That's the NYPD, and I think that our schools will be safer if school safety remains an NYPD responsibility. I think we've also had a retention problem with school safety agents. A lot of that has to do with some of them move on to other civil service employment, NYPD, FDNY, et cetera. But frankly, school safety agents have not been properly compensated over the years.
Yes.
They are not paid nearly well enough,
Yes.
and that's why so many leave after a short term in that particular profession. So that's something that the next mayor really, the next mayor really needs to work on when they enter into contract negotiations with school safety agents and their union representatives. And so to me, that's really the most important things that we need to do so that we have more school safety agents in our schools and that they continue to be under the effective leadership of the NYPD.
Thank you, Councilman Carr. Assemblyman Riley.
Thank you, Mona. So as many of you may know, I have a history of advocating for school safety, especially when I was a member of the Community Education Council 31. I was in that capacity for about 10 years, and the last 4 as the president. And school safety was of paramount concern. With my experience in my career, I was a lieutenant in the police department. So I come in here with a view from many different angles, and especially as a parent myself of public school students, currently 2 high school students in New Dorp High School, and a freshman and a senior. To touch on, Mona, you just mentioned school resource officers, and that was a key part that we spoke about with when we were advocating for school safety. When I was a member of the Community Education Council 31, we advocated to the state legislature long before I was in there for them to allow school districts to hire retired police officers as school resource officers. And the state legislature passed that thanks to our advocacy and pushing for it. And the governor back then signed it in 2014. Unfortunately, I spoke about this with the current administration over the years. They would not take up the ability to use that option under the law. They maintained with using school safety and not using retired police officers. You also spoke about our current, the new incoming police commissioner that was an SRO out in Long Island. We had SROs. They weren't called SROs here in New York City, but they were police officers assigned to schools. There were approximately 85 of them assigned specifically to high schools. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it seems like we're circling back to the days of yesteryear. And it's an approach I think we need to start really thinking about because we had that police officer in the school that made those contacts with students, that had those bonds with students and had his ear to the ground, her ear to the ground, and knew the pulse on the school of what was going on, who were the antagonizers, who were the instigators. And I think that's an approach that's missing. And I'm hoping that Mayor-elect Adams will consider that. Some of the other things that we advocated for, and it was mentioned here tonight, already about the lack of school safety agents, the numbers, the shortage, and a lot of that comes from recently the mandate. But I want to be clear. 6-7 years ago, we were advocating for more school safety agents because Staten Island was always shortchanged. And we did not have the staffing going back 7, 8, 10 years ago, the proper staffing for school safety agents. There are times when you'll see school safety agents being moved from middle schools to our elementary schools because they have a lack of posts being manned. And this is something that I think we really need to put on the forefront, is that we need to advocate for more school safety agents, making sure that we have Eric Adams consider reinstating the police officer in the high schools and some of our middle schools, just to have that feel of what's going on the ground. And, you know, I was looking through some of the comments on this webinar now, and many of the things that were coming up are talking about the recent social media threats, especially going on today. And I want everybody to know that my colleagues on this call, we've all been in contact with the NYPD and the DOE in regards to these social media threats. They are being investigated. I can assure you, they are looking into it. As of now, there are no credible threats to any of our schools here on Staten Island. I think that's something that we need to reassure the public of. And am I saying that that's it, they're dropping the investigation? No, I am not. The investigation is ongoing. Just as we were starting this town hall, I was getting messages about new posts that were coming out. And I want everybody to be reassured that the NYPD and the DOE are investigating. And one last thing, the most important thing that we have, and sometimes there's a lack of it, is communication. We need to communicate with our children, with our school communities. When we see something, we need to speak up right away. And that's a two-way street, right? We always have to advocate for our schools and the DOE in general to be more transparent. And sometimes the information that comes out to the community and to the parents is often delayed, at least in some of our experiences. The reason why that is because a lot of times the messaging has to get approved by a lawyer in Tweed. And that's something that I think really needs to change. And that's something that I've already brought up with Mayor-elect Adams. We brought it up at the press conference that we had with my colleagues. And that's something that we're going to keep continuing to try and improve. But we all need to speak with one voice on that. We all need to make sure that they hear us. And I hope I offered some background information, some clarity about what's going on in the recent social media threats. But I can tell you we're going to continue to monitor them. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Riley. I know, Jimmy, you have some questions, and then we're going to go to our audience questions. Some want to ask questions on camera.
Yeah, this is about the parents. So I just wanted to just reiterate a couple of things. It's great to see this. You know, we need our elected officials, which I really see. We need them to combat the Jimani Williams and the Corey Johnsons out there, because these are the people that want to eliminate school safety agents in our schools. That's number one. And I respect Congressman Carr. You're right. They are not well compensated. I did 17 weeks in police academy making $15 an hour. I had no choice but to leave. I didn't want to leave that job. I had no choice. So you're right. That has to be that. There is no retention there. We are 70 schools and plus and growing on Staten Island. We are down, from what I understand, 70 agents. And what's going on now is you have these schools that need agents. They're pulling them from another school, leaving another school vulnerable. So that's a problem. You know, I know for a fact that my daughter's school, you know, they're short agents every day because they might not have that high crime in that school, but that leaves them vulnerable. So we need to, that's an issue. And there's no repercussions, getting back to what Nicole said, there's no repercussions for these kids in the schools. You know, they get superintendent suspension, which I don't even know why it's called that. Superintendent really is not involved in that, but then they get superintendent suspended. They don't they get 5 days on their superintendent suspension. They're supposed to serve it at Mount Loretto. They're not even obligated to serve the suspension there, and they get a 5-day vacation and they're back at school. So of course they're going to continue to do the crime in the schools because they got no repercussion for these kids. You know, if that means opening up and expanding Mount Loretto, not Mount Loretto, South Richmond High School, expanding that site and making that's where the children go. They're bad actors, we'll call them, in the school. Maybe that's where they need to go, but they cannot continue to disrupt the schools without any repercussions for it. And the request for scanning, I really appreciate that. And Tweed, Mike, you're right, that's a problem. I mean, you know, and it's good. And I also want to mention too, something that Councilman Carr said the other night, raise the age law. Raise the age law has crippled these kids in his school. Raise the age law, for people that don't know, means that no child under the age of 17 can be committed with a crime unless it's a felony, meaning they can wave a knife, they can brandish a knife, they can harass somebody with a knife, but they can't do anything to them. But if they stab them, then they can do something for the kid, because then it's a felony. That's a problem. And we need our elected officials to really combat that with this new administration. And that's kind of all I had, Mona. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. From what I heard listening to the comments from our elected officials, I just, before we go to some of our parents and town hall attendees, I just want to get some numbers from Chief Obey. And starting right now, everybody spoke about the shortage that we have. According to Local 237 Teamsters that represent school safety agents, President Gregory Floyd has said that they are short 1,800 school safety agents. And the reason why there is a shortage of school safety agents is because in 2019, during that defund the NYPD movement, the city council stopped an incoming cohort of new recruits of school safety agents. 2 years later, we finally get, I think, Chief Obi, a new class that just started last month. But my understanding, speaking to school safety agents, is that before, in the past, there would be about 500 recruits going into the police academy for that 17-week training. And for our audience to understand this, school safety agents go through 17 weeks of training at the police academy. They go through just about everything that police officers go through except for firearms training. So it's now, you know, about almost 2 years. We have no new school safety agents. I'm going to use Eric Adams's term, the numerical minority that was complaining and saying school safety agents, you know, are police officers, which they are not. They are civil servants, and they are mothers like myself and grandmothers and from our communities, and fathers, mostly women of color and people of color. But what's happened now with our school safety agents is just regular retirements, attrition, and then not having these new classes. This new class, Chief OB, that just started is only 200 school safety agents. So my question is, just for us as a community to understand the numbers, I would like to know, beginning with Wagner, how many school safety agents are on active duty now at Wagner and on Staten Island? And I'd like to know how many were there in 2019. Because reading the comments from the parents and what Jimmy raised, with the shortage, they're now taking, you know, from one place to cover the other place, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And I just want to say again, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion as a mother of a 13-year-old 8th grader, the reason why we're in this mess with the shortage of 1,800 school safety agents is because the council members, and of course, Jumaane Williams, listened to that numerical minority that was saying, get rid of school safety agents. And now it's 2021, and we're dealing with these criminal justice reforms and this increase in lawlessness in our city and everything going wild. And now this is where we are. But I would like to know the numbers when it comes to school safety agents in 2019 at Wagner, Staten Island, and citywide compared to now. And when I say, just for our audience, school safety agents, there are two levels. The school safety agents that wear the blue shirts are the ones that are on the ground in our schools. Then you have school safety agents that are somewhat like on a management level or higher level. They wear white shirts. They're not the ones in our schools that we see when we take our children to school. So I want to know what the numbers are for the blue shirts, the ones that are on the ground, what the numbers were in 2019 for Wagner, Staten Island, and citywide compared to what the numbers are now. So, and I did, just for everybody knows, I did submit the questions to Chief Obey so that she's prepared to answer these staff.
So, without really getting into the nuances of shortages, we are short. You're right. You said it correctly. We have a class that's in right now of about 200 agents. They will graduate sometime in March. And hopefully with the new administration, we'll get more classes. Hopefully we can address the shortages in the schools citywide. As to how it pertains, the shortage pertains to Wagner. In 2019, they had 12 agents at some point. Right now we have 11. The white shirts that you refer to are the SSSs. That's it. Those are the supervisors. They're not assigned to schools per se. They supervise in boroughs. So, they essentially are assigned to the entire borough, not to a particular school. Wagner is a large school. Right now we have 11 agents, where in 2019 we had 12 agents.
Okay, and for Staten Island, how many in 2019 versus now in 2021?
I don't have the Staten Island comparison. What I can tell you is that our focus is to, our main focus is to ensure that we have the maximum number of agents in schools. So right now, citywide, we have 3,400 SSAs assigned to schools citywide. So at a different point, I'll get back to you as to Staten Island, how many we see just in Staten Island, but I know that we're down about 44 agents in Staten Island. Again, the vaccine mandate, attrition, all of that. But citywide, we have 3,400 agents assigned to schools.
How many agents did we have in 2019 before they stopped the classes?
You had just one more, and that's it. So you had
citywide.
Oh, citywide. I don't have those numbers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I apologize.
No, that's
no, Staten Island. I'm sorry. Just Staten Island. In 2019, we had 198 assigned to the borough. In 2021, we have 226 assigned to the borough.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief Obey. So I'm glad that we have our assembly legislators, our state legislators on here. Before we go to the parents, we're going to be calling on you. So if your hand is raised, we're going to put you on camera to ask your question on camera. Your camera will need to be on. Otherwise, we're not going to let you ask your question because we want to see who's asking these questions. But students are saying they feel unsafe traveling to school. And in many of our communities throughout the city, I'm in the Bronx, I'm in Co-op City, other parts of the city, many of our communities are under siege due to this gun violence and the revolving court door, as well as these raise the age laws. So when students say, whether it's students at Urban Assembly in Brooklyn, where they found the students with the ghost gun, plus $30,000 in cash in his backpack, the students at that school, or the students at Wagner and throughout the city who are saying the same thing. They carry pepper spray, they carry other weapons because they are afraid traveling to school. So this is also something that we do need to address. And my question for Assemblyman Riley and Assemblyman Cusick is, what is going on here? Because these laws that were passed by the state legislature are having unintended consequences, because we can see a direct correlation, between when the laws were passed and now. And then we also see that the revolving door, that is teens being arrested and then transferred to family court, and of course released with their parents and no consequences, all because of these laws, is having an effect. Children are afraid to travel to school, and they are bringing weapons. So my question, Assemblyman Riley, Assemblyman Cusick, and also Councilman Carr, because some of your colleagues in the City Council have requested that there be changes, that we fix this law. But I have to say to our state legislators, children are carrying weapons because they feel unsafe traveling to school and in their communities. What are you going to do, or what are you trying to do to fix this?
So Mona, I took the lead debating the bail reform from my conference, and I was trying to point out several times during the debates that we had that we were dismantling a whole system and painting everybody with a broad brush, and not holding individuals accountable with bail reform. So basically, that we were treating everybody the same, regardless of the individual circumstances. And what I mean by that is, there are some cases that are much more severe and they need to be held accountable. Let me give you an example for an incident maybe in a school. If you have a student that works in Target and they have a razor cutter that they use to open boxes because they're clerking in the school, right? And they get caught with that razor. Common sense would dictate that maybe they shouldn't be held as if it was a weapon, right? Then you have someone that comes in and they have a switchblade and they're under 18. And now, based on this law, they're treated just like that kid with the box cutter who accidentally brought it in, because there's no accountability, because they should be charged, if it's a switchblade, before bail reform was passed, as an adult, and before they raised the age. So what raised the age did was, you had 16-year-olds that committed crimes that an adult would be charged as an adult. They would, at 16 years old, be charged as an adult. Now, if they're under 18, they are not charged as an adult. So what that means is, now they feel like they go to the family court, and family court is not punitive, it's restorative. So there really is no accountability when it comes to holding those who commit crimes that are under 18. So that's something that we've been pushing back on since before the law was passed. We brought it up in committee meetings. We brought it up on the floor in the chamber of the assembly, debating it. And we continue to bring it up day in and day out. But unfortunately, right now, the minority, the majority in the state Senate and the state assembly have not really moved forward with addressing it. But we're having dialogues about it. We're talking about it. We're raising good points to hopefully maybe we can come to the middle and start to really talk about some of the changes that I think will help.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to put up our first group of audience members with questions. And let's see here. We will start first with Valerie Roberts. Ms. Roberts, if you could please turn your camera on and ask your question or make your comments. We're giving everyone a minute to ask a question of the panel. Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing Miss Roberts coming Okay, all right. Ms. Roberts doesn't want to come on camera. Okay, we will go to DW. If you'd like to ask your question, please turn your camera on and ask your question. Okay, DW. Okay, DW is shy as well. Let's go to the next person. That would be okay, Melody Jimenez. Please turn your camera on if you'd like to ask your question. Okay, Ms. Jimenez.
Okay, good evening, everyone. You guys hear me?
Yes, yes, welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just wanted to speak briefly. My name is Melody Jimenez. My organization is called No Voice Unheard. I'm out here based in the Bronx, but I work with different areas of New York City. I just wanted to start with saying that we need to start with looking at this from the root of things, meaning the community. If you guys are open to working with, my question is, are you guys open to working with leaders from the community? Because I think that it's important that we speak on the violence that occurs within our communities that the kids actually live in. You know, sometimes we don't pay attention to those type of things where the communities take effect to these kids and they come into the schools and it's a reflection on where they're at and where they're growing up at, and they're bringing it into the schools. And this is why the crime rate increases. And, you know, it's a topic that's not really spoken about, but I'm big on public safety and I'm big on unity. And I think that if we speak to the right people and we bring the right people to the table, we can probably gain a lot of control within our schools, starting from the root, which is the communities.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Yes.
Would one of our panelists like to respond?
Sure, I'll respond, Mona. So obviously, you know, we always have to be working with all of our community stakeholders in our different school communities. I think that it's important to have different not-for-profits involved and engaged with our students. You know, I was at the Susan Wagner High School public meeting the other day, and CAMBA, which is a not-for-profit local to Staten Island, was represented and has been engaging with some youths, you know, who are dealing with challenges at home that may be leading them to act out inappropriately in the classroom or while they're in school more generally. And those are important to have and to promote, not necessarily that specific not-for-profit, but, you know, to engage with a number of them across the spectrum, you know, where appropriate, depending on the school and then the context. What I would say is that, you know, talking about what Assemblyman Riley was discussing earlier with respect to bail reform and raise the age and all of these issues that have arisen from Albany, is that, you know, what he was describing is that these changes have robbed discretion from our justice system, from the law enforcement end and from the courts. And so we're no longer able to take a particular case and say, okay, this person it would be more appropriate if they were put in the hands of a not-for-profit, if we looked kind of behind the curtain and seeing what's going on at home and how we can kind of help this person onto a better path. And then there are just those that are not redeemable in that way. And they really need to face some sort of punishment, punitive rather than restorative, as Assemblyman Riley was talking about earlier. And so I think that we really need to restore discretion to our disciplinary system in our schools and to our criminal justice system, because that's going to allow us to effectively engage with those who could use the help and then distinguish them from those who aren't interested in being helped.
Thank you, Councilman Carr. So some people are having difficulty actually turning their camera on. We have quite a few guests, attendees here. So let's get started. I'm just gonna call you out and then please ask your question or make your comment, but keep it to a minute. So let's start with Elizabeth Palage. I hope I said your surname right.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm actually a teacher at Susan E. Wagner, and I'm a special ed teacher. So a lot of these incidents occurred with my personal students that were targeted outside of the school, since I teach self-contained. However, I feel like we're the last ones to be notified of what's going on, like the lack of communication. I didn't even know what happened outside until my husband told me. My husband's actually a captain on the island for NYPD. So I feel like my whole class, everyone's like afraid of even the students who come back with these incidents. Like, what do I do for their social well-being? Like, they're afraid to be in groups with these kids who are involved for their own safety, you know, and there's no consequences. The kids return back to school, no problem. No one's suspended. They come back maybe one day later, and then the same behavior occurs again. What do we do? This is citywide. You can't suspend kids. There's so many rules to it. The principal doesn't want to have a high suspension rate because it makes them look bad. What's the protocol for notifying staff and parents about what's going on in the school? Are they supposed to cover it up?
So I think so. I'm a very active parent, PTA, SLT, Title I, all of that stuff. But we also have two former CEC 31 presidents on here, both Sam Pirizzolo and Mike Riley. And I may, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Chancellor's Regs 412 or 413, but they are supposed to not just notify the staff, but they're supposed to notify the parents as well. And I understand that a lot of schools are not doing it. And us at the coalition, we're really starting to get on them about that because parents have a right to know, and especially our faculty, our educators have a right to know. But perhaps Mike or Sam could answer that. And Sam, if you could also ask your question, but if one of you could respond to Ms. Palage.
So, Mona, that's part of the issue that we've been advocating for years is the communication piece. Part of the problem is that there seems to be the legal department of DOE holds back all the information. And, you know, this isn't saying that some principals also do that as well, right? Where they're holding back the information until, you know, a later time in the day, hoping that things may simmer down. That's part of the issue that we have. When it's determined that the incident is safe and we have enough information that we can share with our communities, meaning the staff, the parents, and the students themselves, then it should be shared. I think when it comes to staff members not getting notified, they have to get their chapter leader involved, right? Their chapter leader has to go to their union and point that out, because we all have to work in the same direction here. We all have to work for transparency and communication. And if the chapter leader is not able to fix that with the administration, then it has to go above them. And the same thing happens with us as parents, where if we're not able to get the ability of the school to communicate with us as quickly as possible when the incident is deemed safe, then we need to continue to push at, you know, the PEP meetings, the Panel for Educational Policy. We need to reach out to the superintendents who oversee the individual schools. And so when you look at this, we have to come from all different angles on this, whichever constituency group we're in. And us as elected officials, the same way, because we're getting the information that's being shared with us. It's not like we're always on the ground when it's happening. So the information we share is the information that's given to us. And, you know, for us to make sure.
Us, on Monday, our first incident with the weapons outside, you know, targeted our students. We were in a shelter in a PD after school. All staff were in the building. No one notified us, told us anything until 24 hours later, the following day. Yeah. Citizen app, you know, told us what's going on. My husband told me what's going on while we're in shelter in. School did not tell us till the next day, 24 hours later. And then to
Yes,
find out
yes.
that my student had a gun to his head and I had to call and see how he was doing. The kid didn't come in the whole week. Like,
Yeah.
that's traumatizing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and you know, this is all of us have to have more communication. You know, and that's the key here. I keep saying it, but it really is. You know, part of that incident, when you look at that incident, one of the things that was really troubling and, you know, heartbreaking, we had students that were videoing it and going live on Snapchat and social media instead of picking up the phone and calling 911. It turns out that there was an incident that happened on the other side of the school, that there were NYPD on the scene handling that. If there was a 911 call with a man with a gun, maybe we would have had a quicker response. Maybe
Right.
we wouldn't have had to wait for the arrest to happen today, because the arrest in that incident happened just earlier today.
Mhm.
So, which is good, which means that we were able to get the information out to the public and they identified the persons. But still, these are incidents that you know, we're lucky, because that incident could have been tragic, like really tragic. And you know, part of the thing is for us as parents to have that conversation with our students as well.
Mike, I have a question. So
Thank you.
is Canizaro and Milgrill, the union reps, are they involved in these conversations? Because I have to be honest, my wife is a DOE member too, and you know, as a husband, I'm concerned too. Are they involved in this whole discussion? And another thing too, I want to say is, I think all these staff members need to carry some sort of a walkie, some sort of a radio, because a lot of times when the incidents happens in their classrooms, they got to run to a phone. They don't have the time to run to a phone. You know, they're dodging fists, they're dodging some stuff that's going on in the class. Everybody need to be equipped with some sort of a radio for help when they need help. That's just my 2 cents.
I mean, it's a good point, but you know, the problem comes then, and I know nobody wants to hear this, but it becomes money.
Don't
Right?
say
Because you
money,
gotta
Mike.
have-
They
right?
got more money
Yeah,
than anything.
I understand that, but this is what I'm saying. It's about us pushing to get them to advocate, to give them the radios or give them those response. Right? There's systems now where parent staff members have necklaces with buttons on them that are panic buttons. Right? Those are available. It's all whether the DOE is going to look to acquire those, and those are things that we can push for and we should push for, and you know, that's key. You know, somebody commented and said that I think they didn't realize that when I was talking about the students that were videoing it, it wasn't the incident in the school. I'm talking about the one that was outside the school, because they mentioned in the comments that there was no Wi-Fi. Well, the issue is, if they're on the street and they were videoing it, I think they could have picked up the phone and called 911 instead of recording it and sharing it on Snapchat and Instagram, wherever they were going live with it, wherever they were sharing it. Listen, these are the broad topics that we have to address for the entire community, right? It's not just kids that are standing there videotaping things that happen. Adults do it instead of calling 911 and reporting it. This is a cultural thing, and we really need to get back to basics and have a little humanity and make sure that we make those notifications and call 911 when there's an emergency.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do the order that we're going to have the questions. And then I'll do one last round of some parents that have been also waiting. So we'll go Sam, Lisa, Anna, and Quyan. If you could please ask your question, take a minute. And again, I just want to thank Chief Obi, Assemblyman Riley, Councilman Cusack for staying with us. And you know, we know we're going over time, but we appreciate you so much for answering our community's questions. So, Sam.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my phone is going in and out, but anyway, I'd like to thank you, Mona, for putting this together. Chief Obi, you definitely have my support. If you know Sandra Pabone and Harold Wise, please tell them they have my love. I would like to thank all of our elected officials for being here today, and I'm just going to make a statement before I ask my question. I'd like parents to get out pen and paper, because I'm going to give you some personal information, you know, as we go on. But the problem really is that the administration is bad. We really can't blame teachers, and Mona, you're going to be surprised that I say this, is we really can't even blame the union. The problem is that we have a bad administration, and that bad administration is really put in power by some of our elected officials who are not good. That's really where this really comes from. The point is that we should not be in this position right now. Assemblyman Riley spoke about when the CEC, which I was president of for 7 years, many of you may remember that, when we passed the resolution for school safety, school resource officers, that was under my leadership. Mike was instrumental in that, but we've accomplished a lot. When the Department of Education wanted to co-locate IS 51, we were able to stop that. When we had the PCB problems, and Bloomberg wanted to do really nothing about it or do it at his pace, we were able to stop that. And we stopped it because of what Mike, Assemblyman Riley, hinted on, was what I call the voice of one. All of the parents spoke together unanimously at the same time. And this is really the only way we're going to get anything accomplished. We really should not be in this situation. So the information I wanted to give you is basically my name. My name is Sam Pirazzolo. I'd like you to contact me through Facebook Messenger, if you can. Pirazzolo is spelled Pirozzolo. I happen to be in another function tonight, and I'm due to speak in just a few minutes, so I really can't stay on the call that much longer. But I'll also give you my personal cell phone number. It's 917-533-3437. And while I appreciate the meeting that we're having here with our elected officials, and I think it's wonderful, there's no blame being cast here. But the problem is, what are we going to do to make our children safe tomorrow? I understand we're having conversations. I live down the street from Susan Wagner. I don't need this rolling into my neighborhood, into my property, and to have these problems. I don't want somebody, there's a picture in the advance of a child being pistol whipped by a gun in someone's hands. So while these types of meetings are excellent and they will be productive, hopefully, what are we going to do to keep our teachers and students safe starting tomorrow? And please, if you're a parent, please feel free to reach out to me so we can kind of get this organized.
Thank you, Sam. We're going to continue on to Lisa, Anna, and Kwayan. And then our final four participants I'll put on, and then we hope to close by 9:30. Again, thank you so very much to our guests and also to the parents for joining us this evening. Lisa, could you unmute and ask your question or make your comment, please?
Okay, my daughter goes to Tottenville High School. I understand Wagner is having a major issue right now. But as well as today, Tottenville High School has stated to us parents that they're very short-handed school safety, that they only have 4 agents in the school. Now you have Tottenville that has over 4,000 students. How is 4 student agency gonna stop a fight or anything when you got 4,000 students? And no mention has been made about the student that was found in his vehicle last week with a BB gun. Yes, it was a BB gun. Might not be able to do much harm, but it can still hurt a child. And if we have cops, NYPD armed in hospital and banks, why can't we have that for our children? Is it going to take a tragedy in order for DOE to have NYPD come in to protect our children? I passed Tottenville High School today near Dunkin' Donuts. You had about 50 kids in the parking lot kicking a basketball over the roof, landing on cars, shattering windshields. And you have NYPD sitting on the corner while this is all going on. So, something has to be done, not only for Wagner, but for all the schools in Staten Island. And Michael Riley goes beyond and beyond for our children. And without Michael Riley, we probably won't know half the things we know because the schools aren't informing us. The BB gun incident at Tottenville, we got notified maybe 6 hours later. That's something we should be notified immediately as parents. And we have no contact to our children because there's no Wi-Fi access. It's as a parent, I don't feel safe sending my daughter to Tottenville.
Thank you, Lisa. I will leave that to Councilman Carr and Assemblyman Mike Riley, and of course Chief Obi to answer that. Thank you.
So we don't have school resource officers. We have just school safety agents. I do want to say before we close that our agents do amazing work citywide. I do want to thank them. There is a shortage, yes, but we do have, again, a class. I understand 200 SSAs will not help us with the shortage we have now, but I would assume that we'll have a lot more classes, hopefully next year. Tottenville, to my understanding, has 12 agents. The agents do, what can I say? Just great work. We do the best with what we have. So you had a lot of questions, Lisa, but one thing I do want to mention also is that not only do we have the SSAs in schools, because we don't have, and I think Assemblyman Riley had talked about the SROs. So not SROs, at the time we had a unit called UFT, the Uniform Task Force, UTF, Uniform Task Force. And we did have a number of officers in school. We no longer have that unit, but we rely on the local precincts. And I must say that they have given us excellent support. So especially when we see our problems in a lot of schools during arrivals and dismissals, we lean into that support, the local support from the local precinct to actually help us out. So we're working on getting more agents, again, 200, I think that's a step in the right direction. Not a lot, certainly not enough to help with, the school citywide, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And I'm hoping that in 2022, we actually have additional classes to help us with the shortage.
I understand what you're saying, but why does it have to take for incidents with children, as the councilman said, being pistol whipped outside? Why does it have to take, like Michael Riley said, a child being put with a gun to his head outside Wagner? Why does it have to take these incidents to try to get safety for our children? It shouldn't have to take all these incidents or all these threats to bring NYPD and school safety together to protect our children. Our children, we send to school to get an education, and we want to know our child is safe in school. And unfortunately, at this time of age, the last 2 years, our children have faced a lot with the pandemic, and now they're facing this. I think it's enough our children have faced, and it's time that they're safe at all times. It shouldn't be just now that everybody's trying to come together to get the safety of our children. And not only our children, our teachers. Our teachers are in there 8 hours a day with these children. They treat these kids as their own. So can you imagine what's going through these teachers' heads, especially now knowing all these threats are supposed to be happening, quote unquote, for Friday? It just shouldn't have to be a tragedy like all these to bring NYPD and school safety to protect our children and the teachers.
And so I'll just kind of add to what Deputy Chief Ope was saying. I hear your frustration, and it's the frustration that's born with 8 years of one-party rule in the city, with having a mayor and city hall who does not share our community's priorities. When Mayor Bloomberg left office, we had a budget of approximately $70 billion for the city of New York. It's in excess of $100 billion as of the most recent budget amendment. So much of that increase could have gone to enhancing the ranks of our school safety agents, and it didn't. And we're only just seeing this new class of 200 or so coming in now in the very near future, and that's a shame. And so I think in order to address the things that you're talking about, I have to repeat the things that we started talking about earlier in the conversation, which is that we need more school safety classes. We need to improve retention among school safety agents by increasing pay. That's, again, a contract negotiation responsibility that the mayor has. And I'm hopeful that our incoming mayor, Eric Adams, will take have a better perspective on this than Bill de Blasio has had. And we need to, really relax these vaccine mandates and allow a testing alternative for city employees, because that's going to keep folks from being on the job, and that's a shame. And we need a better headcount. We can't have 11 SSAs for about 3,300 students at Susan Wagner, I think, and the figure that was referenced earlier for Tottenville, because you need folks who are in the building, you need folks who are in the perimeter of the building. I think we would have seen a better response time for some of those incidents that happen near the site of a school, but off site of the school. And that will give people a better sense of security as they send their children to school. And you'll see kids stop bringing weapons to school. I think there was an incident just the other week at IS2, right, where there was an accidental discharge of a pepper spray that a student had. Why does a student feel the need to bring pepper spray to school with them? And I think that we need to really enhance our school safety ranks. Otherwise, we're never going to have people feeling comfortable sending their kids to school, and in turn, students being comfortable being in school.
Thank you. Anna, if you could please ask your question or make your comments, and then we'll go to Kara, Sue, and then we'll close for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. David. Good evening, everybody. I am a mom of IS7 student, and I wanted to echo the same question that Lisa just asked before, and Ms. Perzola as well. My son told me yesterday when I picked him up that there was going to be a school shooting on Friday. When kids let out from school yesterday, when I was picking them up, I did not see a single police officer around the school perimeter. How can I reassure my child tomorrow that he can go to school safely? Because I don't feel that reassurance. I mean, forget about education. I'm not asking for much. My expectations are really low in terms of education, but that's a whole different story. But safety, I thought, was a given when they're in school. Apparently not. So what can be done to reassure myself and other parents that my son is going to come out of that school tomorrow and I'm going to pick him up safely, or Friday when there's supposed to be a school shooting? What's being done now? And what's not 2022, not with new administration, what's being done tomorrow? And by the way, I got one letter from the principal yesterday saying he was working with an NYPD. Nothing since then. There has been no communication from school other than one letter. I don't know what's being done to make sure my child and other children of IS7 and other schools in Staten Island are safe. Thank you.
Mona, I could take that if you don't mind. I spoke to the NYPD and the DOE today, and they are aware of all the threats. It's not just IS7, it's IS2, it's IS24, it is some of our high schools. They have been collecting all the social media posts. They're investigating it. I know from a school administrator, not necessarily IS7, but I can tell you that some students who posted something have been interviewed. They had a visit from the NYPD. So when I say that, and forgive me for using police jargon when I say not credible, I want you to know when I say the threats are not credible, that means that there was an investigation, there was contact made with who posted it, and they have determined that it is not likely to happen. And there's a whole bunch of factors that go into that, and I can't go into specifics. But when the NYPD confirms that an incident or a threat is non-credible, they're not just throwing that to the wind and saying that. I want everybody to understand that they wouldn't say not credible if they did not look into it, because then they're reassuring people, and something could happen. And that's not to say that we should let our guard down, right? You never know who's out there. You never know even if it's somebody that didn't post that threat, but then there's another threat that we didn't know about, right? Because there's some that may have bad intentions and they don't even give you forewarning, right? So the whole concept, and I agree with you about the communication piece, and something I touched on earlier about the legal department of DOE getting involved, and they don't give principals the go ahead to send things out. And sometimes, and I'm not saying this for any specific principal, it could be anywhere. Sometimes they don't put it out in a fair amount of time, or something that we think is reasonable, right? As parents, there may be other factors involved and we just don't know. But as of the threats currently circulating so far, with all the information that I have from the NYPD and the DOE, and I've been in contact with them several times today, there are no credible threats to any of our schools. But I will reach out to the NYPD, to the borough, and talk about what kind of presence we're going to have at our schools for arrival and dismissal tomorrow. I'll forward the concerns that we're hearing tonight to them, and that I can do my best to try and hopefully get an increased presence.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
That does answer my question. I really appreciate you reassuring me and other parents. It would have been great if I didn't know about this call tonight, I would not have heard that. So I'm glad I did and I joined us. But other parents from my son's school might not have, and they don't have this reassurance. So there definitely needs to be a clear communication from the school principal or somebody in authority at that school to all the parents.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Mona, just one last thing, and I want to give you an example, and I'm not going to name the school because I don't want to put anybody on the spotlight. I just got a text message from a school administrator who their concern was they couldn't get the go-ahead from Tweed to send out a letter. So it wound up having to go out electronically. And this is the part that we need to make sure gets fixed. And I know my colleagues on here, I know we're gonna keep pushing for that because communication is the key. I look forward to our new councilman, David Carr, working hard on this as well. I know he will. I know my colleague, Mike Cusick, is going to do the same. I'm going to continue doing it. I know all our advocates, Sam, Mona, these are the things that we care about. And it's not just, and I'm, like I said, I'm not saying this as an elected official. I'm saying this as a parent. This is truly something that needs to be fixed, and we'll keep at it.
Thank you. So we have our final group that's on. I know I see more hands raised, and I'm really sorry, but we cannot keep Chief Obi, Councilman Carr, and Assemblymember Mike Riley here all night, but we are going to have follow-ups. So I just want to give our last three attendees on camera an opportunity to ask their questions. So Quyan, Kara, and then Sue. So Quyan.
Hello, good night, everyone. My name is Quyan Simpkins. I'm a school safety agent. I'm also a member of the New York City School Safety Coalition, and I'm also a parent of over 30 years. Sorry I'm late to the party, but I was at work and duty called, and I just EOT'd about a half an hour ago, but I was kind of listening in and tuning in, which is actually good because it gave me a chance to hear everybody's thoughts, hear everybody's opinions, to get at what everybody feels. And I'm going to speak from three aspects. One, being the school safety aspect. Two, being a coalition member who's advocating for the safety of all the children in the city of New York, who I see as my children. And I'm going to also speak from the parent aspect. And I want to put it in like a tale of, how could you say, the night before Christmas. How did we get here? This is how we got here. And I'm going to say some things that some people may feel are offensive, but at this point, when my children's safety is being threatened and everybody else's children that I see as my children, that the 3,400 of us that are still here keep safe and we see them as our children, and all of our children's lives are in danger, not just their lives, but the school community and staff that we see as our family, as well as our own lives, because no one's talking about how many of us have gotten hurt since school has started in September, breaking up fights, being assaulted, trying to protect children and staff, getting assaulted by families and people on the street. It is a dire situation. How did we get here?
I'm sorry,
we got here.
Diane, I know that you're in the car, but like your face on the top here. Could you turn your light on, perhaps?
I can't help it. Hello, good night. How are you?
Thank you.
How did we get here? City Council. All these issues. Hi, Sam. I know you were in here somewhere. All legislative. All legislative. City Council took school safety and tore it apart. Everyone keeps saying attrition. Yes, the non-hiring of school safety. Everyone keeps saying vaccine mandate. Yes, we lost people. They went on leave without pay because they didn't get vaccinated. This all started. How did we get here? 2018. 2018, the memorandum of understanding, where they gave all control back to the school principal. Raise the age, 2018. Everything all hit us at one time, because people who thought that it was okay to tamper with what worked, tampered with it. I'm a parent. I would never say that children should be penalized to the highest power and that you should throw them away in the jail cell and turn the key and leave it at that. I would never say that. I believe that children can be reformed. I believe that children can be helped, children can be saved, but children need to be made accountable for their actions. I'm going to say it one time. As a parent, as a woman of color raising a young 14-year-old Black man of color, as a parent, a New York City parent, as a person who watches children all day, children need to be made accountable, because when those children become adults, the gloves come off. They're no longer kids, and they're going to be accountable. What happens when they've never had any consequences for their actions? The Department of Education's chancellor's rules and regulations, there's no rules and regulations. There's no accountability for these children's actions. These children are harming other children. These children are harming staff. These children are bringing in weapons. These children are committing adult crimes. These children are doing everything under the sun in these buildings, and they're getting a pat on the back and a rub on the head and go along, Johnny, it's okay. And what do? They go out there and do the same thing. But I'm going to tell you how we got here. It's the streets. And I agree with the young lady who said, you know, we need this is an all-out effort. It has to start in the street, because I've been saying for months, Mona's my witness, we've been together, me, her, Sam, we've been chanting this from all 5 boroughs of New York City. We've had a rally in every city, every borough. We've been on the news, we've been here, we've been there. We've been telling any and everyone who will listen that when school came back to full capacity after this pandemic, that the streets were going to come in these buildings, and they are now here. We've been saying this for the longest, and no one wanted to listen. So how did we get here? Raise the age. How did we get here? Bail reform. How did we get here? No responsibility and accountability for actions. And it's not the children per se. Children are being used as pawns by the adults in their lives who know that they can get these children to carry out adult crimes. And with the raise the age and the bail reform, the revolving door of recidivism, that these children will go in and out, even with handguns, even with assaulting other people's children. They go home with their parent at the end of the night after they come from family court. It is an atrocity, because now children are afraid, yes, on the travel to and from school, because look at the crime in the street. Chief Obi may be able to shed some light on this. I'm not a statistics person, but I will tell you that crime is up everywhere. Everywhere. These children are afraid. There's no safe corridor because we don't have enough agents. Once upon a time, school safety has 6,300 agents, and we could provide safe corridor from trains to buses, from schools to the main strip. And there's something called the Nexus. The Nexus is 4 blocks away, north, south, east, and west of your building. We were able to cover it, but now we can't because we don't have the manpower. Who do I blame for this? And somebody may get mad and say what they want to say, but you can tell them that Ryan Simpkins said this today on this date. The coward of a mayor that we had let this happen, because he took the power away from the NYPD. He took the power away from all law enforcement divisions. He took the power away from parents. Do you know that parents have no power? Children have all the say-so. We are not able to rear our children. Schools cannot discipline children. So at this present time, the children are running the show. Children don't want rules. And the thing about the scanning, I agree with Chief Obi, but then I kind of somewhat don't agree, because principals request scanning. They can request it. A principal can request scanning in their site. Yes, they can. Or it can be a statistical need with the high number of incidents that are happening. But you're saying that children feel criminalized. How are children criminalized when it's a deterrent to keep someone safe? Every city, state, federal, local building, governmental building has scanning. You have to pass through metal detectors in order to get there. That's 1 PP. That's 52 chambers, which is Tweed. That's 65 court. Any school suspension site that a child has to go to a hearing at, them and their parents have to pass through metal detection. Why? Because I've been to hearings as witness and testimony at these hearings. I had to go through metal detection even as a member of school safety. So how is it that our children don't have that same level of safety? And you're asking the children, what do they want? Children don't know what they want. That's why parents have to set rules for their children. Then no one's asking the parent. There's not one survey sent out by the Department of Education. There's not no form of parent engagement from the Department of Education. They have not told parents anything about a transition that they are imposing or trying to get to send school safety governance back. But here's the thing. The vaccine mandate didn't take our numbers down. Neither did the attrition. It is the uncertainty of a job of being transitioned back to DOE. A lot of agents who would not have retired due to not wanting to go back to an agency that they feel can't properly govern them because they can't properly even educate our children. Our children are not proficient in math. They're not proficient in English language second. They're not proficient in anything. They are illiterate and illiterate. DOE has failed our children. They have failed to educate them. And now you're going to let them fail to keep them safe. A lot of agents retired because they said, I'm not going to be here for this, for the fallout. They resigned, anyone who had less than 5 years, because there was nothing for them to lose. They lived in other places where they felt it was something stable. And they felt that, you know what, at this point, we're sinking. Because if you send us back to the Department of Education, it's not going to work. That's what took our numbers down. And then you add in attrition, and then you add in the vaccine mandate that completely wiped us out. The issue is it's legislative on the city's end. It's legislative on the government's end and the state with this raise the age. And it's also a failure on the DOE, and Mona knows my acronym, dead on entry, because they failed to inform. And that Chancellor's Rules and Regulation was A4112 and A413. If something happens in your child's school, the school is supposed to notify the parent of what took place there. Same way they notify you when your child's school has an outbreak of lice. Those things are supposed to be known. Staff is supposed to know. You will not get all the particulars. You will not get the people and names and ages, everything that's involved, but they have a right to let you know that an incident took place because that's your child's safety. Yes, they have to consult legal. It's all with the legal. It's all with the legal. But as a parent, you have a right to know. So this is the situation that we are dealing with. The streets have now come into the schools. So the police hands are tied on the street. They can't even govern because they're afraid to touch anyone, due to the fact that they're afraid that they're going to be, scrutinized or, penalized. You took away the cops' right to do their job. So what does that do? That leaves the streets in a disarray. The streets and the schools are one in correlation. So when the streets are like this, your schools will be exactly the way that the streets are, because the schools are a direct reflection of what happens in the streets. Parents beware, pay attention. Those surveys, someone spoke about a survey. Urban Wildlife Conservation School in the Bronx, there was a survey done, and 94% of staff and students said they did not feel safe in that school. They asked for scanning, and the principal did not want it. Why? Because it made the school look bad. What happened? A young man was killed in that school. And 3 weeks later, that school shut down.
Yep.
The DOE likes to hide, they like to lie, and they like to cover. And I'm not saying they're doing it intentionally, because it's the pressure that they get from the high up. I don't blame the principals, because the principals answer to the superintendents. I don't blame superintendents because they answer to deputies, chancellors, and whomever and whatever. It all is a system where it boils down to the insanity of everybody's afraid of who's on top of them. But the communication is lacking. But here's my issue. Even if you get proper communication, Mona, if the communication is not transparent and truthful on all ends and everybody's end, we are going to be on a sinking ship, and our children are going to be the casualty.
Thank you. We have Kara and we have Sue. I don't know what else to say after what Huayan said. I don't know if Councilman Carr or Assemblyman Riley wants to respond. And I'm really looking at the time, and I know Chief Obey, you look like you are still in the office at this time at night, 8:40. Thank you for your service. The same to Assemblyman Riley and Councilman Carr, but I don't know if you want to respond. And I see Ms. Shapiro there, and she's nodding her head, and Kara G, you too. So
There's really nothing to say, but thank you. Thank you so much.
Councilman Carr.
No, I agree with everything that Queen said, and I just there's really nothing to add on that. I think it was pretty comprehensive.
Thank you. So Kara and then Sue.
Hi, thank you. Well, besides her being 100% correct on everything that she touched on, I have two sons that go to Wagner, and speaking on that situation, particularly in the school with the principal there, Mr. Carr, I showed you the other night, I was there at the meeting, but just to show the lack of communication that is going on, especially in regards to Wagner, just the other night, they had a system where if you wanted to say a comment, you had to get a card. You go to get a card, one hand, don't know what the other's doing, because they cut it off where not everybody even got a turn to speak because they can't even communicate with their own staff properly. Let alone you have the principal who all of a sudden there's an automated phone call and that tells you that it's very nonchalant. There was an incident, there was a lockdown, and it's very non-detailed and non-threatening in a sense. So you make it's almost like he's trying to say like, oh, like there was an argument until the kids come back. Then the kids come back and you see what really goes on due to social media, and they're all passing around videos. Well, guess what? Now we're all sharing it through social media because as parents, how are we supposed to protect our children if we're not being told the correct information? And now weapons are involved and you're not being transparent that there are guns on the premise. And they try to make it say like, oh, well, it wasn't on our school grounds because it was on the sidewalk. If somebody fell on my curb outside, it's my property. I got to pay them, right? They're suing me. No, it is your property. That is your responsibility. And the principal seems to be more about his reputation and the reputation of the school, which it already sucks. I mean, let's be honest. They already have a bad reputation. And he's more worried about that than the safety of the kids, let alone his own staff. They are not hired bouncers. They should not be disarming teens with knives. They're at risk now too. This is insanity all the way around. And now you want to have a town meeting, which a town meeting logistically is you say what you have to say, you introduce the panel, and then you turn it over to the public to state their concerns, their questions, and then there is rebuttal. There's a dialogue. There's a conversation. The other night, it was a stonewall. There was no conversation to be had. There was no answering. There was a panel full of people with their arms crossed like they're staring at you. And you call that a town meeting? If there is no communication between parents and administration, how are we to come to an agreement to keep our children safe? At the end of the day, that is the main subject, not your reputation or the school's reputation. I, as a parent, school should be the second safest place for my children besides my home. I should never have to worry that my child's not coming home. So when I have a principal like that and a situation arises, you know what? Now I don't feel comfortable going to you because you've already proven to me you don't care. You don't care about our kids. You don't care about your own staff. You're more worried about yourself. And part of the question is, how do we get rid of people like that? How do we get them replaced? That's number one. And number two, I know there was a comment earlier about like the metal detectors and it comes down to funding. I'm sorry, but every 3 blocks, there was a speed camera. Now, originally, when they brought those speed cameras to Staten Island, it was said it would only be within 1 mile of a school. Why? To protect the students and for the safety of the kids. Staten Island has a speed camera every 3 feet, practically. I know I've paid a hell of a lot of money on those tickets in the very beginning. I know there's a lot of other people, okay? Take the money from the speed cameras and supply metal detectors. and agents to keep our kids safe. Put that money where it was really meant to go, if that's what it was for. If it was meant to keep the school safe, take the money from the speed cameras, because what are you doing with it? Staten Island, I mean, we pay no matter what we do. We can't even leave our house and come home without paying. We have the worst transportation. We have a choo-choo train. We don't have a subway, let's face it. You want to work in the city, it costs you an arm and a leg and a kidney just to go to work with the express buses. Every 6 months to a year, the toll hikes. You're going to tell me there is not enough money on this borough when we pay every single day and millions of dollars have been made alone with just those speed cameras, and you're going to tell me you don't have enough money to keep our children safe? I got a big problem with that. From the top down, I got a big problem, and I know I'm not the only parent who has a problem with it. So there should not be any question of money when it comes to our children. Our children do not deserve a dollar sign put on their life. At the end of the day, if you don't teach our children when we're old and decrepit and in the nursing home, who's going to be taking care of us? They are. Invest in that generation. They're the next generation. They have to continue. We should be supplying and putting everything into our kids. Everything to teach them, everything to keep them safe, to give them security. These kids don't have a sense of security. They don't have a sense of safety. And we're in a day and age where everybody gets the trophy. No. Make them earn it. Teach them how to earn things. Little Johnny shouldn't get a trophy if he sat on the bench the whole season. He shouldn't get the same reward as the kid who busted his butt the whole time. And these kids that are wilding out, they need real repercussions, not a slap on the wrist or a vacation like what was said, because that's what they're getting. It seems like everything has spiraled out. How do we get it back? I just don't know.
Chief Obey, Councilman Carr, Assemblyman Riley, that was a lot to process. I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Our children shouldn't have a dollar sign on their life. That's powerful.
All right, I'll jump in because I saw there was a big pause there. Absolutely right. I agree. I mean, but I have, and in no way am I trying to make this political. I have legislation that would actually use and require a lockbox for that speed camera money. And it could only be used to improve safety around schools. Part of that is for traffic safety, but it also gives a wide latitude to the chancellor and the New York City Police Department commissioner to tap into that funding. And I think there's a way of utilizing those funds for safety in our schools, not just around our schools. And if there's, if I can get that legislation to move and possibly amend it to include specifically adding, using it for safety measures like more school safety agents, metal detectors, wanding, the handheld wands, then that's something that I think we should explore. But the key is we have to get the legislature in both the Assembly and the Senate, the majority of those chambers to actually support it and let it pass through committee and get voted on and get signed by the governor. And that's something that we can do as a collective voice. And I think that's what we have to do. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be my legislation, but it has to be legislation, right? It has to be something that we force their hands to do it. And I'm not one to say that I need my name on it. I just want to be a part of the conversation and get it done.
And so I think Assemblyman Riley's bill is a great idea. I'm not usually for dedicated levies, but I think in this instance, it's the fair thing to do. I also think City Hall would have a lot less of an appetite putting out speed cameras if they knew they weren't going to be able to get to use that money however they wanted. So I think that's also an important point to note there too. I think one of the things that we haven't discussed tonight, and I did mention at the town hall, and I'm sorry that it was a frustrating experience for you being a witness to that, but is that, not having the anti-crime unit in the NYPD for the last couple of years has really been difficult in terms of getting guns off our street. Sorry, it's been about a year now that I think about it. And it's because, we have violence in our schools, but then we also have violence in our schools with deadly weapons. And those are related, but two distinct issues, right? And I think that if we had the anti-crime unit, if we had officers who were, plain clothes in unmarked cars, going after guns on the streets, we wouldn't necessarily have seen the incidents in front of Susan Wagner play out the way they did. Maybe there still would have been a fight, but maybe there wouldn't have been a gun involved. And I think that's really important to note. And that's one of the things that I'm really happy to see with the change of administration coming in January 1st, is we have an incoming mayor who's committed to reviving the anti-crime unit in the future, because that's going to be key to keeping illegal guns off our streets, not just in schools, but generally. I think we keep seeing the advance headlines one after the other. There's a gun in the school. There was a carjacking in New Springville the other day at gunpoint. It's really just, it's terrible, and it has to stop. And it's only going to stop when you have police officers empowered to do the job that they've been trained to do, and that's to keep us safe.
Thank
Mona,
you.
I just wanted to comment on something that a couple of things that Kara said. I totally agree with not having Q&A at end of meetings. I hate that. I'm not a big fan of that, where the time clock, I get the time clock for sense of time, but to be not acknowledged when you're speaking, I think becomes not productive at all. I totally with you on that. And that needs to change, because what's the point of being there if you're not going to get any answers to your questions? Another thing is, and I'm a big supporter of, I'm a parent advocate, but I'm also a big supporter of schools and administrators. But you can go to your PTA meetings. You can go and ask to speak at your SLT meetings to hold whoever it is in your school accountable. So don't feel that you don't just have to sit back and take whatever, or not have a voice in that realm either. So you do have those options for you.
Yeah, because I happen to be one of the people who got cut off the other night. I went to the town hall, got my number, tried to be respectful. But again, the right didn't know what the left was doing amongst themselves. That the girl up in the front with the mic, she only knows about a certain number of people that were given a card to speak, but yet in the back, they gave out multiple cards. So when they can't even communicate like that, how do you expect them to communicate with us as the parents? And he has proven that over and over and over again.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara. Sue, you were nodding your head a lot. So,
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sue Shapiro from Tottenville High School. I'm the chapter leader. And we stand, with Wagner going through this right now, and all of Staten Island, we can get through this because we're Staten Island strong. I want to say that so much of it does depend on a strong, decisive administration. We invested this year. We have 14 guidance counselors. We increased our number. We have 4 social workers, recognizing that kids were coming back into the school system with trauma that we would have to address. And we increased our number of deans on the floors. To the parent that was concerned about the internet threats, they're not credible. The school is a joyful place to come, and kids are so happy to be back. And we try to create, learning activities that engage them. Parents that are frustrated, the SLTs are public meetings. So the school leadership team is where you'll initiate your plans to have the scanners. We were able to do that successfully at Tottenville. However, again, it goes back to not having enough school agents because we can't really scan when there aren't enough school agents. And I think we do have to really be vocal as members of our PTA, the SLTs, UFTs, CSAs, that we really need to keep the school agents with the New York Police Department and not to be returned to the DOE. I think that's like a universal good. I also think that we should know that the expiration date for mayoral control ends coming up. There's a sunset date for that. And that we should all really advocate, for returning it to the DOE. These systems, when they work well. I mean, we have a really collaborative relationship at Tottenville with staff and with our administration. I'm so sorry. And I wonder, how long does the school community have to be in crisis before somebody steps in and sort of looks at what has to happen there? I would encourage the parents of Wagner to reach out to Dr. Watson. She is a wonderful asset for our community, and she's really receptive to parental voice, to student voice. And I think she'll expedite that, with the officer present tonight. And I think the school scanning will happen because it really is the right thing to do. You go to a sporting event, you go through a scanner. You go to the airport, you go through a scanner. It's really how people present it. It keeps our kids safe. It keeps our staff safe. We love it. The last thing I wanted to say is that, just we'll get through this together as a Staten Island strong community. I'm available to have, any questions or whatever. I'm at Tottenville Chapter Leader at gmail.com. If people want to reach out, I'm happy to work with the leadership over at the UFT leadership at Wagner. I just really want everybody to know that we'll get through this together, just like we got through the pandemic year. We're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. It is 9 o'clock. I was asked, and many of you know, as mothers, when your child asks you something, it's hard to say no. So my daughter, who is a graduate of New York City Public Schools, so LaGuardia High School graduate, would like to say something. So, and then we will do the closing remarks, and we'd like to hear from Chief Obie, Councilman Carr, and Assemblymember Riley, and then we will close. So Maimuna Davids.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I would just like to say, before I say anything, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because I know it has been a long night and a long town hall. But as my mother just said, I requested the ability to be able to say something at the end because I've been sitting with my camera off, monitoring the chats and the Q&A for the duration of the town hall. And I noticed that we had parents speak, we had clergy speak, we had teachers speak, we had school safety agents speak, but we didn't actually have any students. And I know that as my mother just said, I am a graduate of LaGuardia High School. So I'm not necessarily still in the New York City public education system, but I do have a younger brother who is 13, who is in the system. And I just wanted to say something as a graduate of the system. I remember every single lockdown I had in my high school and in my middle school, when there would be threats or knives located in the building or outside of the building. There was actually a gun located in the bushes outside of MLK High School, which is directly across the street from LaGuardia. You can actually see it from the windows. And I remember instances when I would not be allowed to leave the building after school because there'd be altercations occurring directly across the street. When you look back, you realize that maybe you should have had metal detectors, but as a child, as a student, you don't want them because they're an inconvenience. To have to take a minute and a half out of your morning to have to go through the metal detectors and wonder if the school safety agent is going to take away your jewel. Because that's really what it is. The kids don't want metal detectors because they don't want to get caught having a vape on them, or some girls carry pepper spray on their keys and they don't want to have to worry about getting pulled over and having to be spoken to about bringing a weapon onto premises. But there are, I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this fact, but The class of the freshman class in college right now have the Sandy Hook survivors. So that is an entire class of kids who are not going to experience a freshman year. I have many kids who I went to school with, elementary and middle school, both in the Bronx, who will not get to experience where I am now, being a proud graduate of college with my bachelor's, class of 2020. All because of incidents after school or school shootings. And if we do not have school safety agents because we're understaffed, because we didn't hire them, because no one is applying, because they don't want to abide by the vaccine mandates, I understand. Get metal detectors. If you are understaffed, get the metal detectors. If you are staffed, then congratulations, use them. But we should not have to worry about our safety in a school building. I should not be able to vividly recall locking the door in my music choir class and hiding behind the wall, hoping not to be seen from the window of the door. I should not have to worry about how long it's going to take me to get home because I'm not allowed to leave the school building because there's a fight going on outside. We need to make sure that kids are worrying about how they're going to do on their algebra test and not the fact that they might get shanked outside of the building. It's traumatizing. And to hear politicians say that we don't need it, or to hear children currently, I mean, there are children in me because I am older than them, but to hear kids say that they don't want metal detectors or that they'll be criminalized, they just don't realize. And we as adults tend to say children don't know what's best for them. But where do we draw the line when we say children don't know what's best for them, but they say that they don't want metal detectors, so let's not give it to them? We need to keep them safe. So that's just what I wanted to say as a graduate and as a survivor, I guess, of New York City. Keep our children safe, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Maimuna. So we're going to close, and we'll do closing remarks, beginning with Chief Obi. And again, Chief Obi, it is 9 o'clock. You are at work. You are in the office. I don't know how to say thank you. Thank you, because we are all in the comfort of our homes. So thank you so very much for listening to us, listening to the community members, to the parents, to our educators that were on here. Thank you very much for taking the time out and to hearing us out. So we'll start closing remarks with you.
No, thank you. I think you've said it all. Thank you for putting this together. I have heard, I've listened, and I'll take you back to my partners of the DOE, and we'll work with Wagner to try to see if we can get scanning in the school. Okay. But thank you.
Thank you, Chief Obi. Assemblymember Riley.
Mona, thank you, and thank you to all the panelists and all the parents that shared their remarks. Let's just keep the open dialogue and keep pushing for the safety measures that we want implemented. And I thank everybody for participating. And this isn't the last thing you're going to hear about it, right? We're going to keep going. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Councilman Carr.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you for having me here today. I'm just so glad to have been on this Zoom and to have heard from all the participants and to be joined by my colleagues in government. These are weighty issues, and we absolutely need to start moving the ball forward now on improving public safety in our schools and in the long term moving forward. And I look forward to returning to continue this discussion and to talk about what we've been doing from this point moving forward, so that we can have some accountability in this dialogue as well.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. And my co-host, Jimmy.
Yes, I'm monitoring the chat throughout the time, and I want to make it clear that this is not a Wagner High School issue. this is happening in a lot of our schools here, especially in our district. Weapons being taken out of our schools every day, whether it's made to public or it's not made to public. So we hear you, the parents that are out there. It's not just Wagner High School. This is a citywide issue, and especially in our district. And this is something that I speak to the superintendent about all the time. I encourage people to come to our CEC meetings. Voice your concerns, be that voice. We'll be there to help and help you along the way. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, weapons being vouched as found property. There's a lot of things that we could continue to talk about. But I also wouldn't want to leave here without having something concrete to keep this momentum going and keep the ball going. It doesn't end here at this conversation at 9 o'clock at night. We want to be able to do this again and have more of these productive meetings. So I just want to thank all our elected officials. I really appreciate Chief Obi. I appreciate it. Everybody coming on here. Mona, you're amazing at what you do. So I appreciate you being the voice for us. And thank you for all the people that parents that came on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say this. I'm so happy that we have Councilman Carr here, because Councilman, we're going to be knocking on your door. Some of these concerns raised, especially the lack of notification to parents when these incidents happen. It's not just a Staten Island thing, it's citywide, and parents have the right to know. And parents should be engaged. And if something is happening at our child's school, we as well as the educators, the school staff should be made aware of. And we hope to work with you, Councilman Carr, and your colleagues in the City Council to hold the Department of Education accountable. I know we have a new chancellor coming in, and we look forward to engaging Chancellor Banks. But we hope that when we engage him, Councilman Carr, you'll be there with us when we need to have these conversations about engaging parents who are the stakeholders as well. And Assemblyman Riley, these laws, parents are in an uproar. We see what's happening in our communities throughout the city, Assemblyman, and we see that what's happening in the streets has now spilled over into the schools. And we hope to work with you and others in the legislature to push to fix these laws. Granted, we understand why there was a need or somewhat of a need, but there are unintended consequences that our children are feeling now in the schools. And Chief Obi, I just want to say thank you so very much for everything that you're doing. We'll still be probably knocking down on your door because we really need more school safety agents. And we want to see the recruitment classes going up to 500 agents. And, it's a pandemic. There are a lot of people who are unemployed, and we'd like to work with you and the department that when these classes are coming up or it's recruitment time, to help get this information also out to parents and to our communities so that we can strengthen these numbers, because we need our school safety agents in our schools to continue to protect our children. And to our parents, listen, get involved. We need you to get involved. Believe it or not, politics does affect you and affects your families. And this is what has happened. So please go to the coalition website, nycschoolsafetycoalition.com. You can contact us through the website. You can contact me directly. My email is mona@nycschoolsafetycoalition.com. We have a new chancellor, we have a new police commissioner, and we have a new mayor. And we need to let them know exactly what we need from them to educate our children, to provide them with a high quality education, but also to keep them safe in school, because no child can learn in an unsafe environment. So again, Chief Obi, thank you so very much. Assemblyman Riley, Councilman Carr, Jimmy, thank you so very much for all the work that you do. To our parents who are very passionate and who have stayed on this town hall for so long, thank you for caring about all of our children. And if you have any questions or if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists tonight, please contact me and I'll be happy to forward their respective contact information to you. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year. Be safe and be well. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.